Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? How would you answer that question if you were in an interview? It could be a trick question, it could be a loaded question, but if you want to get that job, you need to know how to answer that question. Stay with us for this episode of Get Hired, and we'll help you on your way to answering that question the right way. Don't go away, we'll be right back. And welcome to Get Hired. In today's episode, we're going to unpack how to answer the interview question: where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, is this a trick question? It could be if you don't respond effectively or you don't know how to respond effectively. So, we need to dive into making you or helping you answer that question well so that you can land your desired dream job. If you don't know me, if you haven't met me before, my name is Bridgetti Lim Banda and I'm from Cape Town in South Africa. And our live stream today is made possible by StreamYard, the Interview Survival Guide, and Be Live Media. So a warm welcome. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome to you as well. But if you're watching the show live, welcome. If you're seeing us on Amazon, on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn. So regardless of where you're watching, a very warm welcome to the show. Now, before I invite my amazing co-host, Aletta Rochat, to join me, because she really is key to helping you succeed, one of the things we did on the very first show of Get Hired was show you the technology that you needed to use in order to be successful. And so, as with every episode, we start the show with just a couple of things to help you have the right technology if you are preparing for an interview. Now, these days, thanks to the pandemic, a lot of us have gotten a lot more comfortable on camera, and also one of the positive outcomes of the pandemic is that we can now work globally. Thanks to technology, and thanks to the fact that during the pandemic we got a lot more comfortable with working online. So you can accept a job literally anywhere in the world if you've got access to the internet. Now, one of the things that we learn when we're doing social media, for example, like if you're a person that likes to do TikTok or Instagram, you may have gotten into the habit of holding your phone in portrait mode. If you are going to be interviewed, you want to do just the opposite. Don't use your phone in portrait mode. It's a big mistake because you're not going to be as visible to your interviewer, because likely it's going to be on a platform like Zoom or something similar, Zoom or Teams or whatever it is, and they use the landscape orientation. So if you want to look your best on camera, turn your phone into landscape mode, because that way it's going to use all the screen real estate, and it's going to make the interview so much more comfortable, and you're going to be able to show yourself a lot more confidently. Now, do not try. We discussed this at length in the beginning of the series. Do not try and hold your phone in your hand. Obviously, it's going to be great if you're on your computer, because that's easy to just, we talked about raising your computer so that it's eye level, so that you're making contact with the camera, talking to the camera. But you can use your phone. Doesn't mean that you can't use your phone. Just put your phone into a tripod of any kind, literally. I mean, take your pick. Any kind of tripod, there are tons of them. And here's a quick hack. If you don't have a tripod, literally take your phone and stick your phone to the window. What's great about that is you're going to have your phone at a 90-degree angle, which is going to make you look your best. And you're going to have front-facing lighting. We talked about that extensively as well. You want front-facing lighting for your interview. The worst thing you can do is have audio issues. You do not want to do that during your interview. So in order to avoid that and be prepared for it, please don't leave this to the last minute. Preparation is key. It's everything. So if you really want to make sure that your audio is good, you can use something like an external microphone. I mean, these things are a dime a dozen. You get the Boya, the lavalier. I really like the Rode lavalier microphone. These are just additional things you can do. But if all else fails, I love the Apple iPods, but you can literally use any of the earphones, anyone. That's going to take care of your audio, and it's also going to avoid you having feedback during your interviews. You don't want to irritate your interviewer by having feedback. So, these are little things that can make a huge difference, and can make the difference between whether you get the job or you don't get the job. Now, if you are to interview on your laptop, again, a simple thing: clean the lens of your webcam. A tiny little thing, but it'll make a difference. So if you make sure your webcam works. If you have an external webcam, fantastic. I recommend anything in the Logitech range. They are amazing. I use the Logitech Brio. And if you're a tech geek, oh my goodness, and you want to invest in a DSLR camera for your interview, so you look absolutely perfect. You don't buy one if you don't have one. You don't need it. But if you have one, yay. So those are just some of the little ways in which you can ensure success. Today's topic, though, can be a loaded question. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Oh my goodness. One of the things you want to do is say, I want to have your job in the next 5 years. I'm going to invite my amazing co-host, Aletta Rochat, to help us answer that question confidently. If you haven't met Aletta yet, she is a certified world-class speaking coach. She's an interview coach, an internationally recognized interview coach. She's a distinguished Toastmaster, an author. She's also the founder of Voicing Your Potential and co-founder of the Interview Survival Guide. Now, Aletta has trained and spoken in more than 22 countries, and she's got a proven system to help you get hired. And with that, let me ask Aletta to join me. Aletta, how are you today?
Hi, Bridgetti. Wonderful to be here with you and the listeners and the viewers today.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to dive into question. So one of the things that I would like to start off with is, when your interviewer says to you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Why do they ask that question?
It's really helpful to think about why a recruiter would ask a question like that. Put yourself in the recruiter's shoes for a moment. It's expensive to hire staff. And the higher up the ladder you get, the more expensive it becomes. So they want to ensure that they're not getting someone who's going to be there only as a placeholder until something else shows up. Because it costs a lot of money, not only in recruiting fees, but to onboard someone. Often it takes anything between 3 and 6 months before you are really up and running in your job. And during that time, you're an expensive overhead. So the company is trying to protect itself by only hiring people who really want to work there, who are committed to being there for the long term, who can add value long beyond the startup phase when they are being carried by other people who've got more experience. So generally, they're using it as a way to assess your commitment to the company and your approach to a job. Are you someone who's just job hopping? And if it's like, it reminds me of people who change their cell number or mobile number frequently because they just go for the next deal. And if another deal comes up, they ditch that one, they go for the next one. That's not the reputation you want in your career. Employers want people who are going to stay, who are going to grow with the company, add value. And that is why they ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I have to add that that's probably a pre-pandemic question, because I think after the pandemic, the time frame might be shorter. They might be saying, where do you see yourself in 2 years? Because everything has shifted so much that we find it difficult to think in 5-year increments.
That's a very good point. I remember a time when they used to say, where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
Yeah. And gone are the days
but
where people stay so long in careers. It's far more common nowadays that people don't spend 10 or 20 years in a career. They might spend 2 to 5 years, and that's considered normal. But again, just bear in mind the startup costs to get you up and going is probably very, very heavy, and especially in the first year.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. So I like that you said, you need to understand why they are asking you that question. Because if you don't understand the background to the question, you could answer incorrectly. And yeah, and would you say that how you answer that question can also differ from your pay grade? If you are a what is the word now? If you are a, I forgot, if you're a trainee, for example, they would expect you to want to move on. They don't want a trainee that's going to remain a trainee for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
They want to know
Yeah.
that you are going to grow.
Yeah.
So if you're in a C-suite job, for example, would you answer that differently to being in a lower level job?
I think it depends on what you can see on the horizon. One of my clients is a big food retailer, and I work with their graduates who are going through, their new hires
That's
going
the word I
through
was looking for. I was looking for the word graduate earlier.
graduate. So those people have an 18-month or a 2-year program that they are signed up for. So that is what they can see, and they are hoping to prove themselves in that time and be offered a permanent position. So their answer to that question might well be framed within that time frame. If you are a C-suite executive, I would suspect that generally speaking, your time frame would be longer, because C-suite people don't come and go. Generally, they're there for the longer haul, and they're part of the long-term planning of the organization. And there, that time frame might be dictated by certain projects that you're responsible for delivering. But certainly at the C-suite level, you do not want people coming in and out. It's just way too expensive and way too disruptive for an organization to have turnover or churn at that rate or at that level.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And I think that is something you raised a very valid point about the cost to company of a new inductee on their team. It costs a lot of money, so they want to know that they're going to get their money's worth in terms of the investment that they've made, and that this isn't just an in-between job. So if you kind of say, well, I'm applying for this job now, but I plan to move to America in 6 months' time from now or a year from now, that's going to raise a flag, right?
Absolutely. I mean, why would they invest all that money in you if you're not going to be a long-term hire? So perhaps this leads us very nicely into another question that you can ask before you answer this, and that is, what do you want to demonstrate as a result of the answer that you give to this question? So to my mind, generally speaking, I would highly recommend that you demonstrate that you are committed to the company, that you really want to work there. And that would entail knowing what their values are, knowing why you want to work there, and being able to say why you'd like to work there, why you're a perfect fit for the company, or why the company is a perfect fit for you. And I think you want to demonstrate that you want to develop yourself. And you can couch that by saying, in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, I hope to have taken advantage of all the development opportunities that you bring my way so that I can add more value to the company. So the risk you run is, if you just talk about what you want in 2 to 5 years' time, you miss the opportunity of saying what you can contribute to the company in 2 to 5 years. So as you develop, hopefully your value increases and you're able to add more and be more of a contribution to the company. And that's what the company wants to hear, that it's not just about you, but that you see and understand that you are there to perform a job, but also to add value to the company. So make sure that your answer demonstrates that you're there for the long haul, you're there because this is the right fit and you're the right fit for the company, and that you want to add value over time, and that you perhaps recognize that your value will increase over time. As a new hire, you're just getting to grips with the job, but as you become more effective, you can contribute more.
What about somebody sort of answering in a manner that makes it seem that they think they're going to fix the company in the next year?
Yeah, be very careful. There are big egos involved. And the worst case I ever heard of was somebody who went for an interview, a panel interview, and he said to them, with all due respect, you guys don't know what you're doing. And I would do X, Y, and Z. And surprise, surprise, he wasn't hired. You cannot say to the incumbents that you don't know what you're doing, even if you think that. That is not the way to win friends and be the preferred candidate. You can have ideas based on your knowledge of the company, and you have solutions that you think could work, but until you work there, you don't know the inside story. You don't know the background. You don't know, for instance, how many, what the budget is, or what the budget constraints are, or what contracts are in place that you have to honor. So coming in from the outside, you think you've got all the answers, and some of them you may well have, and they need your expertise. But don't assume that based on your limited knowledge of the company, that you could come in and fix the company. And certainly in an interview, I think that would alienate the people you're talking to if they thought that that was what you were suggesting. They don't want to know it all. They want a team player who can fit into the team and be teachable, be open to new suggestions, and bring their expertise from the outside and their prior knowledge and experience to identify possible solutions. Absolutely. But going in and saying that, thank goodness I've arrived, you guys, if only I'd been there 6 months ago, I would have saved you from all this, that's not going to work.
You're absolutely right. You don't want to run the risk of doing that. And to me, just listening to you and the guidelines that you've shared so far just encapsulates the need to ensure that you have some form of coaching before you apply for the job. And that's part of what you and Teresa do, is help or coach people so that they can answer these questions skillfully. Mm-hmm. Now, I've got one more question to ask you, but if you can just for a minute talk about the coaching that you offer and how that helps people, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I think primarily with the coaching, what Teresa and I do is give people an objective view of how they come across, because you don't know what you don't know. So you think you're coming across confidently, but because interviewing is a bit like dating. You might not have done it for a while. and then you've got to go back into the dating pool, or have an interview after years of not doing it, you can easily be rusty. And as a result of that, you're not 100% confident, and you can miss wonderful opportunities that come your way to showcase your skills, to highlight your strengths, but you don't always know how to do that by yourself. So the coaching is almost like a fast track to success, because we've spent hours and days and weeks and months and coached many people over time in different industries all over the world. So we know what works. We know what recruiters are looking for. So our coaching helps fast track that interview prep. And our goal is to make sure that you are super confident, not because it's a false sense of confidence, but because you've done the work. And with the thorough interview prep, when you get to the interview, you will be able to be more relaxed because you know you've done the work, you've got your stories ready, and you know how to answer the questions. So hope is not an interview strategy. And I used to be the queen of winging it, and I would just hope it would go well. And you can't do that anymore. The job market is way too competitive. And the one part of the interview process that you can control is the interview preparation. And we just fast forward that for you, demystify it, to give you templates. We just make it easy for you to get it right. And that's the value of the coaching.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. And I would highly recommend that you consider coaching, because people can tell. You don't want to go there and read your answer off a page either.
No.
That comes across as insincere and completely unprepared, because there's no one size fits all, and you want to answer in a manner that also sounds authentic, right? And shows that you are prepared. But you can only do that if you really, really are prepared. As you said, you can't wing it. You can't wing your way through answering questions skillfully.
And some of the questions, Bridgetti, are worded so specifically. It's fine answering questions that you know the answer to. In other words, tell us about your CV. You've lived your CV. That wouldn't be terribly difficult for most people to do. But when they say to you, tell us about a time when you had a project that was a failure, what did you learn from it? In that moment, while you're already anxious, can you come up with that exact, precise story related to the question and tell it in a way that tells them what you need them to hear? That's very difficult to do in the moment. But if you've done the coaching ahead of time, you've had a lot of time to consider which stories you could use and how to tell them and why you would share them. So we help you develop an interview strategy. So you're not on the back foot just hoping you get the right questions. You've prepared for all the questions, even the ones you don't want to get. You've done the prep, you're ready. And then in that moment, you can relax. You've got a bank of stories to choose from, and you've got the best chance of optimizing the opportunity that comes with that interview. So to give you just another example, going back to where do you see yourself in 5 years? So many people think the right answer is, I want your job in 5 years' time. And depending on who's interviewing you, that could be acceptable, or it could be a big red flag, because maybe there's not room to advance at that level within 5 years. And maybe that person is, not anywhere near retirement and has no plans of going anywhere. And do they really want someone who's gunning for their job? So be careful with, people think that demonstrates they're ambitious. Yes, you can be ambitious, but you don't have to do it by threatening the person who's interviewing you. There are better ways of doing it.
That is so well said. Oh my goodness. If you've just joined the show, you're watching Get Hired with myself, Bridgetti Lim Banda, and my amazing host, Aletta Rochat. And we're talking about how to confidently answer the interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? It can be a loaded question, but it can also work to your advantage if you know how to answer that question skillfully. We're going to take a really, really quick break. And when we come back, we're going to cover what you should be careful of before you answer the question, just in summary. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Get Hired with myself, Bridgetti Lim Banda, and Aletta Rochat. And today we were answering the interview question, how should you answer, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Aletta, what if I was that person looking for the job, and I'm asked the question, what do I need to be careful of when I answer that question?
Bridgetti, I think the worst thing you can do is not have any response and say things like, well, I don't know what's available, so I can't tell you what I want, where I'll be in 5 years. That kind of is a dramatic lack of vision, if I can put it that way. Even if you don't know the specific roles that are potentially available, you can say something like, I want to have progressed in my job and possibly gone up to the next level and be managing a team. That's perfectly acceptable to say something like that. Don't, as we just said a moment ago, threaten the person with that you're going to take over their job. You might want to, and that might well be an aspiration, but I'm not sure it's a wise aspiration to share during an interview. And I think also don't be dictatorial. Remember, it's not all about you. So, you might well want to be a partner in the company in 5 years' time, but you can say, I'd like to be very close to becoming a partner, but not I'm demanding that if I'm not a partner in 5 years, I'm going to leave. It's that aggressive tone we want to avoid. You could rather use language like, in 5 years' time, I would be very honored to be considered worthy of becoming a partner. That kind of speaks to your ambition, but also to your awareness that you've got to earn your place there, that it's not time bound, that if you're there for 5 years, you'll automatically become a partner. So just watch the language you use. You want to show that you've got value, that you've prepared to work hard, you're in it for the long haul. And as a result, you'd love to be promoted, but you're not demanding to be promoted. There's a very fine line between those. So yeah, those are kind of the general guidelines. So have something in mind that demonstrates that you're willing to learn, you're willing to put in the hard work, and you're committed for the long run, even if you don't quite know the specifics of where that might take you.
Absolutely. I like that advice. While I was listening to you, I was thinking of specific use cases, like in a law firm, for example, or an accounting firm. It's going to be a red flag if your response shows that you have no ambition to grow, to make part within that accounting firm or within that law firm. Those are just two use cases I thought of off the cuff, but the same applies in any organization. It's like you can't be a baby that drinks milk all your life. That's not going to work. You need to move from drinking milk to having solid foods, moving from crawling to walking to jumping to skipping, and it's the same in your career path. But you can't walk before you haven't crawled, just
Exactly.
as an analogy. And so you have to think of that, sort of progression that would make sense for that particular industry that you are in, so that it shows that you actually understand your industry, that you understand the hierarchy, that you understand the growth path. Any closing comments or advice that you've got for people watching today?
I think, Bridgetti, always think of what it looks like on the other side of the table, and consider if you were the one recruiting someone and you ask them a question, where do you see yourself in 2 years or 5 years? What would be important for you to hear from that candidate? And then use that insight and use that to craft your own questions. For me, the big thing is demonstrate that you are there for the long haul, that you prepared to really work and add value to the company, and that you want to be considered for promotion at a next level, but not that you're demanding it just simply because you're breathing. So you're teachable, you're committed, you want to be a contribution, you want to be part of a team. That is what I would want to hear if I was a recruiter.
So you definitely want to demonstrate that you are a team player, and that you are, you've got a plan in mind, but not a plan to take over your interviewer's job.
Yeah, that may or may not work. It's a bit risky.
and it all boils down to planning. And again, if you've just joined the show right now, if you missed the beginning or the middle part, we talked about the coaching that Aletta and Teresa offers. So definitely, if you are currently in the job market and you are seeking guidance, and especially with the pandemic, a lot of you may have huge gaps in your CV due to the unintended consequences of COVID. It happens. You may have had to leave your job to take care of a parent, or another family member or a child or something over an extended period due to COVID. And so now you sit with these huge gaps in your CV, and you're going into the job market. How do you position yourself correct? And that's where coaching can become extremely valuable, because, unfortunately, the longer you're out of the job market, Aletta, tell me, the longer you're out of the job market, the less confident you can become about your skills.
Absolutely.
You
And
can
remember,
start, doubting yourself.
yeah, and due to the pandemic, it's more common than ever before for people to have gaps in their CV. So that is not the issue. The issue is, how do you explain what you've done during that time? And ideally, you want to demonstrate that you've taken courses, you've tried to upskill your knowledge, you've used the time wisely so that when you get back into the job market, you can be more of a contribution. So that's what you concentrate on. Not that I've been unemployed for 6 months, but during that time, I've taken advantage of doing these courses, or whatever it is, to upskill yourself so that you are better prepared going back into the job market.
Something that someone also mentioned is, the fact that you gave up your job to take care of a sick significant other and to
Yeah.
manage their illness or their end of life or whatever, um, can also work in your favor, because it
Mhm.
speaks about the kind of character that you have. And so with
Yes.
coaching, you can also help people, um, find those positive nuances of their experience, even if it was an extended one, so that it can still work in their favor to get that job, correct?
Absolutely. And one of the ways you can do that relatively easily is to describe what you've done. You've taken time off to look after a parent. And then one of the techniques we teach you is a technique, the STAR technique, to tell a story, but then we add the plus onto it, which is the lessons that you learn from that. Because even if you're
Mm.
taking care of a child or an elderly relative, or managing a kiddies team, whatever it is, there are lessons that you've learned that you can bring back to the workplace. So it might be in terms of planning, it might be in terms of managing scarce resources, it could be in terms of leadership, of advocating for people who can't speak up for themselves. Those are all qualities that you can apply in the workplace, so they have value. It just depends on how you position it. So be unafraid to bring things from outside of work into the workspace, because it can be a very big contribution.
Well, that is the end of our show for today. So if you've just joined us at the tail end of Get Hired today, we were talking about how to confidently and skillfully answer the interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So if you've just joined us, I would encourage you to go back and re-watch this episode so that you can, find out what the pointers are to help you answer the interview question, where do you see yourself in 5 years successfully? And also, if you have been out of the job market for an extended period of time, and you would like some coaching, to help yourself or position yourself better to get the job that you desire or the promotion that you desire, then please feel free to make a comment, in the comment section just below the show. Even if you do it later, we'll always get a notification of any of the comments. So feel free to do that. I wanted to say a huge big thank you again, whether you've joined us over on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, and also on Amazon. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we would invite you to come back and join us on the next episode of Get Hired. So thank you, everyone. Aletta, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And look forward to our next show.
Absolutely. Thanks, Bridgetti.
And I just want to give a huge big shout out to Lillian. Lillian, always great to see in the comments. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you on the next episode of Get Hired. Take care.
Bye.